Brandon Marcello is on with us. Hey, Brandon, I was talking earlier about Texas, and I'm not going to tell you what I said about Texas, but I just want just some general feedback about the Texas Longhorns football team and how good you think they are. Thank you.
I think they're the most boring, great team in America right now. They just have more talent than almost everybody else that they face, which is good enough to win games. But they're the type of team that can either decide to play with their food or devour it. And they've decided to just mostly play with it. And, I saw them in person this past weekend, and they were most definitely the better team than Arkansas, but then you watch them and they're just kind of playing around a little bit. The offense isn't necessarily as aggressive as you want it to be with its play calling. They're not attacking down the field, but their defense is elite, and that kind of holds opponents down. But then all of a sudden in that game, Arkansas gets back within a field goal, and they're in trouble. And then they respond and get a touchdown the way they need to from Quinn Ewers and co. But you can't play that way in a playoff, just kind of resting on your laurels and thinking you can win a championship that way. And for that matter, I think that's kind of what we saw against Georgia earlier this season, right? They end up losing that game at home big time, their biggest game of the year. They're a great team. They have a lot of talent, but I'm not sure that they're elite, and with their schedule, they just managed to kind of coast by and be a top 5 team. And if they had played one or two more top 20 type teams, they might actually have another loss on their schedule.
We went through the schedule and just looked at their quality wins. Obviously, they did beat Vanderbilt, which Vanderbilt's a little better than we thought they would be. And they lost to Georgia. And so it's not quite Indiana-esque. And I'll have you talk on Indiana next because they really haven't played anybody. But to me, maybe they've played such bad teams, they haven't had to actually, iron sharpens iron. And so maybe they're just existing. They haven't had to be pushed, so therefore they don't push.
I think there's something to that. They'll be pushed in a couple of weeks against Texas A&M when they go to College Station. That's why I think that this team needs some sense of urgency when they get on the road. I thought that they would probably do that even this past week against Arkansas because they were on the road in a rivalry game, and they got up 10-0, but it wasn't like anything special. And it's not just me who believes this. I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people, and they're just going, listen, Texas is just really kind of a boring team to watch. And during the game, like everybody's only talking about, hey, is Arch Manning going to play? I mean, there's still some Texas fans even out there that think that Quinn Ewers shouldn't be the quarterback. And I could see why, because they're not allowing him to throw deep all that often. He does seem to give up on plays a little bit early when the pocket collapses, which is a little concerning. And if you're a team that wants to win a championship, an SEC title or a playoff title, you need to be playing better. You need to be playing to full maximum speed at least some of the time. And they just seem to be kind of coasting by every week.
I do often preface it by going, I hate Texas. Now I hate them because I respect them because they have more money than us. They've always been big brother. I hate Texas. I do respect the fact they have their own color. Like, that's kind of cool. Although I think red is a cooler color. But then I just go in and I think Texas is just, I think they're mediocre because they haven't had to be better than that. And that's what we were talking about before you came on. I did say I think their players are all better and they look great when they come out of the tunnel, but they just haven't really had to do it. So they haven't done it. But let's go to Indiana now because I think it's interesting. Here they are in the top 5. And they have played even less. So I think they're on bye this week too. So are we just waiting for the Ohio State game?
Oh, Ohio State's this week, baby.
Oh, they're on bye. Were they on bye last week?
And it's going to be huge.
Ohio State played Northwestern.
No. Was Indiana on bye?
They were on bye last week.
Got it. Yeah.
They got their big payday for their coach, Kurt Cignetti, got a big new contract worth $8 million a year for the next 8 years. And now that they're preparing for Ohio State, actually that line opened up. I think they're like 11 or 12-point underdogs on the road. And, Vegas always knows, right? And I think that you see these the past couple of weeks, you could pinpoint that. Look at BYU, Kansas this past week. Kansas was only a 3-point underdog on the road at BYU. They knew BYU was primed for an upset against Kansas, and Kansas beat them there at BYU. And in this game, you got Indiana as like 11 or 12-point underdog at Ohio State. They know what they see on film and what they see on paper, just the talent level disparity there. But having said that, Indiana's offense has been explosive pretty much against every team they've played. And I've seen Ohio State play in person earlier this year against Oregon, and they're suspect in the secondary. And that's a good matchup for Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke and his receivers, including Elijah Sherrod, who's one of the best receivers in the country. This game is very interesting, one, for a lot of reasons, playoff implications, Big Ten championship implications, but I don't think enough people are giving Indiana credit for what they've done this year. They've beaten every single team on their schedule by 14 points or more, except for one, and that was Michigan. I think that this game is going to be a little bit closer than that. Maybe Ohio State ends up winning by 10 points, but I think it's going to be closer throughout the game there until the end. And I'm just afraid that if Indiana loses this game, that the playoff committee is going to severely punish them and drop them from the top 5 all the way to outside the top 12. And that's not necessarily what they should do. You shouldn't punish them for the schedules that they've played, and then when they finally play somebody, they lost, so we have to drop them. Well, if that's the case, look at Georgia. I mean, Georgia lost by double digits at Ole Miss. You didn't drop them very far. We got to be kind of maintain a standard here moving forward. I think just because they don't have that brand name that they're being punished for it. I think if you put a big M on their helmet for Michigan and they played the same schedule and they were undefeated going into Ohio State, they'd probably be number 2 in the country right now.
So then I would say that even if they lose, the amount they lose by will be a big indicator of what the committee does. I mean, a 10-point loss, not that bad. A 30-point loss, possibly since they've played no one else, I could understand and go, okay, that's justified that they do kick them out. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, certainly. If they get blown out, if they lose by more than 2 touchdowns, even on the road there in the horseshoe, I think you do need to drop them maybe completely out of the picture there, even with the quote unquote 1 loss, and be behind several 2-loss teams. I don't think there's any doubt about that. My question is like, do they drop them, say, like 7 or 8 spots just for losing by a touchdown or by 10 points? That would be the incorrect thing to do, because based off the past, they haven't done that to other teams, but they've been treating Indiana differently in these last 2 playoff committee rankings. They had them below some teams they should not be below, including that were below teams that were in the AP poll below them. So I have questions. I think that they kind of pinpointed Indiana as their sacrificial lamb this week, that if they end up losing, even by a tad bit, they're going to drop them steeply.
So Cignetti signed the deal for 8 years, but we know the nature of the beast. Do you think if LSU ends up moving on, not this season, I don't think they're going to move on this season, but that Cignetti could end up at a place like an LSU? Because the 8-year deal really doesn't mean anything except for him. It's a little bit of stability. Do you think he's a guy that still would like to move to one of these major blue bloodish type programs?
You know, I think a lot of coaches out there say that I'm happy where I'm at. I haven't really thought about ever leaving. But that's the case. But then when they're presented the opportunity, actually their agent approaches them and gives them a reality of what life could be like, that changes everything. A lot of coaches just literally live in a bubble. And until someone comes up and pops it and walks in there and shows them something, they're not really aware of what else life could be like. So it depends, really, one, on what kind of challenge you want next in a year or two. Secondly, is he still winning at Indiana? And then third, what's his new buyout? We haven't gotten the new numbers for his buyout right now. And listen, Bobby, we're in an era now where a lot of universities are hesitant to fire coaches because they're afraid of paying the large buyout. And why is that different from the past? Because revenue sharing is coming up this fall. They're going to have to spend $20.5 million each year on players. And to pay that in addition to a buyout of 20, 40, 50, 60 million dollars, it's a hefty price tag, and one that is very difficult to kind of sell to your constituents, your boosters and everything, because a lot of these ADs are now going out, hey, I need you to, the money you were giving me, I either need you to give me more money, or I need you to redirect the money you're giving actually to the athletics department or to our NIL situation to help with this revenue sharing. It's become quite the load, and it's why a lot of coaches out there who may have been fired this year, including Billy Napier at Florida, are safe going into this offseason.
And also, Napier has kind of instilled a bit of confidence in me watching him now too. You know, I feel, who cares about me and my confidence, but still, like I and I've seen his rate, 4-7 or 5-5. He's had those general type seasons, but like they've come on and they've with a third string quarterback. They didn't win that game, obviously, the kid from Yale. But I don't know. Like I'm rooting for Billy Napier. I'm rooting for Alabama. I've never rooted for Alabama ever, but the way that they acted like DeBoer was like the worst coach ever and he was wearing a t-shirt and not, like the guy is probably top 2 or 3 coaches that exist on the planet now in college football. And the Bama fans were acting like we just need to move on. And that makes me root for him for some weird reason. So like I'm big Alabama buyer right now. If I had to pick a team, I would pick Ohio State / Alabama, but I'm going to just pick one Alabama because I'm a SEC homer. Who would you pick if you had to?
It's a great question. I'm on board with Ohio State, and I'm also on board with Georgia at this point, despite having 2 losses. When they play well, they play extremely well. They play better than anybody else in the country, in my opinion. And I thought this past week, Carson Beck, who had thrown more interceptions during a 6-game stretch in the SEC than we have seen in several years, he really bounced back against Tennessee this week. Didn't throw a single interception, and he gained some confidence. And why is that? Because their offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, just finally decided to scheme up some plays that would help them. They started throwing to the tight end. They are loaded with tight ends. And when you throw to the tight end, it's much easier routes to throw to right in the middle of the field, usually shorter stuff. And they've got the type of tight ends that can do a lot after the catch. So they did that. 10 of his completions were to tight ends in that game. Easy passes, and 2 of them went for touchdowns. That gives Beck some confidence. It also adds a different wrinkle to this offense, which had been struggling throughout this year. But Georgia's got all the other pieces around him. They got a running back. They got the offensive line. They definitely have the defense to play for a championship. And Georgia's battle-tested. They've been on the road at Alabama. They've been on the road at Ole Miss. They've been on the road to Texas, and they beat Texas by double digits. I really like Georgia at this point. I think they've got a little bit more momentum going here into the latter part of the regular season.
Deion Sanders, Coach of the Year?
Yeah, I think so. Most definitely. He's up there. You know, if Kurt Cignetti were to somehow beat Ohio State this week, I think Coach Cignetti would definitely probably be the Coach of the Year material there. But Deion Sanders, what he's done at Colorado, not just like from last year to this year, but in season, has been incredible to watch. Week 1, I was there covering them, and their game against North Dakota State, they had a lot of the same issues they had last year. The offensive line couldn't block. The defensive line wasn't really getting to the quarterback, creating havoc. But they've really have gotten better week to week. And you actually look at the strength of their team. Yes, we want to talk about Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, the best quarterback-receiver combo in the country. But that defensive line is one of the better ones in the country right now, just as far as havoc rate. This past week against Utah, they forced 3 or 4 interceptions. They had 4 sacks. They had a bunch of tackles for loss, disruptive in the backfield. And Utah coach Kyle Whittingham, who's been doing this forever in the industry, said that that's the best team they've played all year. And by the way, they just played an undefeated BYU the week before that. Colorado has gotten better week to week. And I know that's a cliche, but they legitimately have. That's what's been most impressive to me about this team. It's not necessarily just the record, but how they got there. They're getting better every week. And that's a great story to see.
I have 3 final questions for you. I want to go back to Ohio State for a second and the pressure on Ryan Day, not to make the playoff, but to win the national championship. Let's say, they get the bye, which they'll get the bye. Let's say they lose in we'll call it the first round, but it's actually the second round. Let's say they lose there. Is his job in jeopardy?
That's a very interesting question. I don't think so. It also depends on like the context of it. Are they losing the Big Ten championship game and then also losing their very first playoff game? That would be damning. I mean, heck, listen, I think we all assume they're going to beat Michigan. And right now they're probably like 4 touchdown favorites against Michigan in the final game of the regular season. But goodness, could you imagine if he loses to Michigan again? I think that would be enough to potentially have him out the door. The fans there were livid even when they lost to Oregon earlier this season, because the big knock on him was like, you can beat everybody but Ohio State. And then you lose to Oregon. Now the big thing is like, you can't beat anybody in the top 5 unless it's like Penn State. And that's it. It's very high expectations there. I think they're higher there than really anywhere else in America this season on any coach. And anything less than getting to the national championship game there, is a disappointment this season because of everything they did in the offseason, the transfer portal, hiring coaches. I mean, hell, you went and hired UCLA head coach Chip Kelly to call plays for you. And if you fall short of reaching the national championship game, it's a failure to them.
Hey, Brandon, do you feel like, and I know you're going to answer this in a humble way, but do you feel like you're getting like more famous? Because I feel like you're just like in a lot of places now. Do people like recognize you more if you're out at games, or are they like, yeah, you're Brandon Marcello?
Yeah, mostly in the SEC. I've been in the SEC for quite a while, so that helps as well. There was this period of time there for about 2 or 3 years where that wasn't necessarily the case because I used to be much bigger physically, and I lost a lot of weight, so I became a little bit unrecognizable to people. But yeah, most definitely. I do a lot more different types of hits with people, radio, TV. I'm doing a lot more TV work. In fact, championship weekend on SEC championship weekend and all the other conference title games, I'm going to be in studio all weekend at CBS Sports doing stuff. So I can't wait for that. And, it's just a lot of fun. I love talking football. And I'm just open to any opportunity that comes my way to kind of share my passion.
Dude, that's awesome that you're going to go do the studio stuff. Congratulations. That's massive. Like, I'm proud for you. That's really cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm just trying to decide if I should wear a suit or just be completely casual and piss everybody off in the studio.
I often have that decision to make amongst myself. And if I ever, it's like going to a party or like a gathering. It's not like I go to parties. I'm the freaking biggest loser there is. But if it's like we're having an event and it's like, how should I dress? If I don't know the people, I tend to overdress a bit just to be safe. And then once they know me, I will way underdress and just DGAF and like show up in like a t-shirt. But I like to set the stage and like, I care. And then once you're like, oh, this guy cares. Then it's like, I do the artist thing too, where I'm like, I'm an artist. I show up how I am. But dude, I'm looking forward to watching you on that. That is really, really cool. Okay. Final question. SMU, should they make it?
If they win the ACC championship, I think so. ACC's bordering on maybe being a 2-bid league, but it most likely looks like 1, but it could be 2 still. And SMU, I think they just got to win out the regular season. They can't afford another loss against Cal or Virginia because that's weak losses. So if they win out, go to the ACC championship game, and if the team they play is Miami, I think the cachet there is possible that even if SMU loses that game, they would make the playoff potentially. The thing that's kind of holding SMU back a little bit right now, even standing where they're at, undefeated in the ACC, is that they have 1 loss in non-conference, and that's against BYU. And that team was a top 5 type team, but they just lost this previous week. So that hits them a little bit. But I think if they just win these next 2 games, get to the ACC championship game, and if they face Miami, even if they lose that game, they have an opportunity to potentially get in, but it's going to be pretty slim. Their best chance, obviously, is just to win the ACC title and leave no doubt. But SMU has been an incredible story. I think they've won 17 of their last 18 games. It's an incredible thing. First team ever to transition from the group of 5 conference to a power conference and start better than 1-0 in conference. And here they are undefeated in conference near the end of the season, something we've never seen before in college football. Don't think enough of people are talking about it. I've written about it in the past just a few weeks ago, and more people will start taking notice, obviously, if they get to the ACC championship game. But it's an incredible job Rhett Lashley's done down there.
They take notice because he's Mr. Network now. He's going to show up in a suit now talking to us. Like,
Big time.
Oh, I probably got some like stocks to go trade as soon as we get off here. Like a CEO to talk to. Holy crap. Brandon, thank you. Love you, dude. And we'll see you next week.
See you, Bobby. Appreciate you, man.
See you, buddy.